Okay, we're starting Siman Kuf Chaf, the halachos of Tevillas Keilim. Okay, so I'm going to start by reading the din. You can see it up here. You'll see why in a second. And the Mechaber says like this: if a person buys from someone who's not Jewish, klei suda, which are either made out of metal or glass, or they're Keilim, which means is they're Cheres Keilim. They don't need tefillah, but they're covered with lead on the outside. Lead does need tefillah. So in all these cases, even though they're new and you don't need to kasher them, so then there's nothing treif about them. So you're mechuyev to do tefillah in a mikvah or in a mayan. And the Ramah says, but that last little part, he says, they came if they're covered with lead, even if it's on the inside alone, he should make tefillah without a bracha, because that's what the Ramah has a machlokes about that. Okay, so the reason why I put this slide up here like this is because the Mechaber has an awful lot of things packed into this din. Okay, and I put this up to show you that we're gonna wait to talk about most of the parts that are in here until later. Okay, which is to say, this that you have to buy from a guy's lead halachas tez shir gil aleph. That has to be clear. We're going to do all the way at the end of the siman, and that has to be klei suda. We're going to do halacha hey. We're going to focus on the part of it that's the yellow part. If it's shamartas or shazchuchas. About Avram Rufnim is really right here. That's really the truth here, about things that are covered, but we're going to wait for Halacha Vav and Zayin, where we're going to talk about things that have made of more than one material. And the last thing is how you should do the tefillah, that we're going to wait for Halacha Beis. There's going to be more halachas about actually doing the tefillah. Okay, so for our din here, all we're going to talk about is that part that's right there in the middle, that if they're made out of matechas or schuchas, that they need tefillah. So, where does this thing come from? So if you look at the Mishnayos, okay, if you look at the Mishnayos, just be patient. If you look at the Mishnayos, it doesn't say anything in the Mishnayos about what material something has to be in order to be chayv tefillah. What? I'm coming. I know that there's a person coming. So the Gemara has two direct statements about it and one indirect. Okay, the first statement the Gemara says like this: Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef bought mana de marda from a guy, and he thought he needed to be tefillah to tevel it. And someone said back to him, no, it's not true. The Torah says you only have to tevel metal keilim. Okay, what's a mana de marda? What does that mean?
That's its keilim.
I'm gonna be patient. I'm going to explain to you in a second. Okay, what's a mana de marda? So Rashi says a mana de marda is something made out of earth and animal dung mixed together. Okay, that has a name. Okay, those are called mud bricks. Okay, and this house is made out of that, or adobe. It's also called that. And to this day, there are people who still make that. Now, I don't see any history of people making keilim like that. You make food out of it. But that house over there is made out of those kind of mud bricks. Okay, exactly what Rashi describes.
What's the table house?
I didn't say. I'm just showing you the dugma. I couldn't find the dugma. I couldn't. I said I cannot find a dugma of somebody making that out of keilim that you eat food with them. Okay, but just to recite that, it's such a real thing. What Rashi describes. Okay, so the Gemara says is. So the Gemara says. I'm having a bad day here, right? So the Gemara says that no, he thought you had to tevel it, and he answered him back, no, you only required to tevel metal things. Okay, now what the havamina was, the Mitzvah will be next time. What was his havamina that he needed to tevel? That will be for next time. But that he says that you're mechuyev to tevel is because you only need to do. Oh my gosh, I don't know what my slides are. What next slide is? Let's try. Should we guess? Yeah, it's not my next. Okay, not the next slide. So what he's talking about is. Okay, pause for that. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. What's the second Gemara? Okay, the second Gemara says Amar Rashi. Rashi says is glass keilim. Right, this is the next lines in the Gemara. That glass keilim. So since they could be fixed if they get broken, they have a din of they have klimatos. Okay, so those are the two Gemaras that take specifically about things, which is actually the two parts of our din here. Shamatchas needs tefillah, Shazchuchas also needs tefillah mitzvah. Matchas, most Rishonim hold is chayv and tefillah mitzvah, and Shel Suchas, come on, everybody holds that it's chayv only mitzvah. Okay, there's one other thing in the Gemara. And that is that the Gemara says that kunya. The Gemara says, what's the din of kunya? So this is an indirect telling you a din, which is what it says like kunya, which is what is kunya. Actually, it's made out of cheres, and you cover it with avor. You put lead on the outside. That's called lead glazed earthenware. Okay, those are pictures of it, that kind of stuff.
All four glazed?
Yeah, they're all the same thing, all the same type of material. So that kind of material, the Gemara asks whether it's high in tefillah or not. Not negate us. That's the end of the din. Not negate us now. But the indirect, what you're seeing from there is that the Shiloh Gemara is like this. It's made of cheres. Cheres does not need tefillah, and it's covered with avor, with lead, and lead does need tefillah. So that's the Gemara's question. Okay, so you're indirectly seeing that cheres doesn't need tefillah. Okay, so that's
it's only on the outside.
Whether it needs, I'm not talking about the Gemara's Shiloh is, but the Gemara is in passing is making the point of saying that cheres does not need tefillah. That's why there's a Shiloh. The cheres part does not need, the lead part does need. So the Gemara says, what do we do with this cleat that it's half of it needs and half of it doesn't?
What's that glass picture?
It's just glass breaking.
You want to look at the right to left to left to right. If you look at the other way, it's things fixed.
Right, okay. Man, what do you guys have this morning? Yeah, okay, anyhow. So those are the Gemaras that say what kind of materials have to be Tevel. You see the Tevel Keilim, metal. The Gemara says, and not the Mana de Marda. Glass and Mechayiv Tefillah, Cheres is also not, and it's going to be doing later on, it's going to also say wood is also not Chayiv Tefillah, as we would have expected. Okay? Now let's go on. Now, the Torah says, in case if you didn't think that I really knew that there was a pasuk coming, the Torah says that you're mechuyev to do tefillah for 6 metals. Okay, and the pasuk says like this: es hazov, es hakesef, es hanachoyes, es habarzel, es habedil, es ha'iforis. Okay, so these six materials. Then that's all that pasuk said. That is a whole pasuk. In the next shulchan it says that you have to type it. Okay, so these are 4 of the materials. That's bedil, I believe, and that bedil means tin, and ha'iforis is lead. Okay, so nowadays we don't make any keilim out of lead anymore because now we believe that lead leaches into your food and poisons people. So they don't make any food keilim out of lead anymore. Okay, so you're not going to find lead keilim nowadays.
In China.
You're not supposed to find keilim that are made out of lead anymore. Okay, so but the other ones are
Cold also?
what?
Cold liquid?
Cold liquid. Everyone's too concerned of things leaching out. There's no such thing. You're not going to find lead keilim. Nobody makes lead keilim. Okay, so now within today. The goal today is we're going to just, if I could use it, get our feet wet, just get started on this. A lot of the heavier stuff is going to be for next time, okay? So the first thing is like this. The Torah says that these 6 metals that need tefillah. Okay? In my mind, we can break this down into 4 types that we're going to talk about today. Okay? 4 types just for of today's part. Next time will be the more complicated stuff. And that's like this. Okay? The first is metals when you use a pure form of the metal, the way it says in the Torah, okay, which are gold and copper and tin are used in 100% pure the way they are, okay. What we call gold, 24 karat gold means pure. This is a hot tahar. We get pure gold or copper and tin. They're used as is. Okay? Those are obviously chayv and tefillah. The Torah says it's made of gold or copper and tin. That's what it is. It is. It's made of pure gold or copper. That's what it's made out of. Okay, that's the simplest one that's chayv and tefillah. Okay, the second is where you don't use a pure form of the metal, but use a mix of the 2 of the metals that are written in the Torah. Okay, and the simplest one, which is it's merumas, or we'll call it an asmachta in the pasuk, is the second one, is kesef. Okay, nobody uses kesef pure. Nobody uses pure silver. It's considered too soft. Nowadays, I'm presuming
gold.
As if with gold, they do use. There's such thing as pure gold. I don't think there's no such thing, but nobody uses it. But when you've ever seen on a piece of silver it says 925? Yeah, I don't know whether they used to do it like that. If they always do it like that. It's called 925 because it's 92.5% pure. Okay, that's why it's called 925. That's in 925 out of 1,000. So these things are used in, but they're a mix of 2 of the metals that themselves are mechuyev in tefillah. So it's obvious that if you take something that's 92.5% silver and 7.5% copper, then obviously it's chayv in tefillah. Both of the things that make up this material are both chayv in tefillah.
Okay. Look at these.
Okay.
You're coming about to do what? How many that
I didn't say that. I'm just going to tell you. I'm just telling you that there are 4. I'm just telling you that wait a second. Okay, I'm not the finish of it. This is partial. Okay, the second case is also partial. If you take something that's bronze. Okay, bronze is not what we call bronze. It's not made of any. It's not the 6 metals that are listed, okay, but bronze really is copper and tin mixed together. That's what it is. Okay, so if copper is chayv tefillah and tin is chayv tefillah, then obviously if you take bronze, it's chayv tefillah. The same thing for pewter, okay, or most forms of gold, of 18 and 14 karat gold. Okay, 18 karat means that it's 75%, means 18/24 gold, or 14/24. Okay, so whatever that is, but the rest of it is usually things that are chayv tefillah. Also, so those are chayv tefillah. Okay, the next category. You have a metal, one of the 6 metals, that's mixed with something that's not chayv tefillah. Okay? Okay? It's not chayv tefillah. Okay? So you take carbon steel or cast iron, both of them are iron mixed with different amounts of carbon to give it all kinds of special properties. So those things we say, we make an assumption that, well, what should be the din of something like this that's made out of 95%, okay, or 99% made out of a thing that's chayv tefillah? So we would say we'd follow the roiv.
I'm sorry, why are you jumping to a mix of non-metal, but just the iron doesn't come pure? You didn't talk about iron.
Iron is one of the things listed in Torah, okay, but people don't use plain iron. Cast iron is what we would use, okay, with this amount, or carbon steel. Okay, that's just what we call that. So it's not common. You're going to find things made
Iron.
Steel is not a real associated with steel is an alloy. It's iron with carbon in a certain way. It's called steel. So in these to me it's obvious that this thing contains steel also. Okay, it's made out of we follow the roiv. In fact, some of the contemporary places, I found it in Mechasitzah in Shevet Levi. They talk about it. They bring a raya from a Mishnah in Keilim. Okay, I don't think it needs a raya, but there's a Mishnah in Keilim that talks about where they have Keilim that are made of 2 metals. It's the same metal, but one is tamei and one is tahar. So there, the Mishnah says is that if whatever the roiv is, that's what the din of it. Whether it's tamei or tahar follows the roiv. Okay, the Baishakis also, yes. There's a raya from a Taz later on in Hilchos Tevillas Keilim. There's also a Taz later on who also makes the same kind of an assumption that you follow the roiv. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward. There's a third kind. Okay, and the fourth kind is, what happens if it's a variation of the third kind, which is, what happens if you mix the metal together with what we call a new metal? Okay, now, new metals, which is to say, not one of the 6 metals listed in the Torah, but things that have been, we'll say, discovered or begun to be used in more modern time, that's something we'll talk about in Mitzvah Shem next time. That's its own shiloh, that whether those are chayv tefillah. But let's say we take some brass. Okay, nowadays, you make brass out of copper and zinc. Okay, it didn't used to be. It used to be they made brass out of copper and lead. That's what they tell me. But nowadays they make it out of copper and zinc. Okay, so, or you make stainless steel out of iron and chromium. Okay, so you're making mainly out of something that's chayv tefillah, but partially out of something that's a new metal. Okay, whether it's chayv tefillah or not, we don't know. We'll talk about that next time, whether it is or is not chayv tefillah. But so it's a variation of that. Or we have what we call white gold. Okay, the white gold is obviously automatically not pure gold. Okay, it's gold mixed with something else and gives it a different color. So these things that it's mixed with something that's not one of the 6 metals listed in the Torah. But again, it's the roiv of the thing is the metal that is listed in the Torah, that's chayv tefillah. So to us, that's again simple enough to say that these things are chayv tefillah. Okay? Now, all those things that I mentioned to you, all these 4 types that I mentioned to you until now, are, to me, straightforward enough that they should be chayv tefillah, which is why none of the person talk about it. Okay? No one says, again, I mentioned to you some contemporary people who talk about it, but nobody's talking about it as if there's a shiloh to it. Okay? What the shiloh we're going to talk about is when we came to metals that are not listed in Torah. Mitzvah Shem for next time. Okay? But no one has to say is stainless steel chayv tefillah or not, because if you think about what stainless steel is made out of, it's made out of iron. Okay? It's roiv made out of iron.
Why do you have to do this with metal? Why could you do this with?
What? The difference is, it's a variation of that. And the ones before, we knew that the minor material wasn't chayv tefillah. Here, it's a question whether the minor material is chayv tefillah. Okay. Yes.
Why did you just make this level 4 with
3?
With 65% chayv tefillah and the rest putter tefillah?
You're right. So it's just a variation of it.
Is that a shiloh? Is that not vadei?
No. Just saying what that in level 3 was chayv. If you mix with carbon,
65% chayv, 35% totally putter.
Would be chayv anyhow. Right, would be chayv. Right, correct.
What is aluminum and stainless steel?
Aluminum is its own element. Excuse me, stainless steel is iron mixed with chromium. No, I did new metals. We're not talking about. Okay, but next time, what the din is of these things by themselves? What if they have something that's just made out of zinc? Okay, what would be the din of that thing? Okay.
What's primary? What metal?
It's a mixture of 2 metals. copper and zinc. The primary metal is 65 to 90%.
So the first one is the primary?
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
C and Z.
Okay. Okay. So that's how much we're going to talk about metals for today. Okay. The other thing for today is, again, we're really all warming up for next time. That's the truth.
The next one's going to be a long one.
We'll see. Okay. I was going to do everything together. I realized it was hopeless. Okay. The Gemara says that glass is not high in Tevillas with Raisa, but it's mechuyev in Tevillas with Rabbanan. Why? Okay. That's what the word Gemara means. Okay. What does that mean? So, the translation most people would say is, they're like metal, because if they would break, you could fix them. So they could be fixed if they broke, and therefore they're just like metal, and so therefore Chazal said, just like metal is chayim teil, so glass is chayim teil also. Okay? So that, if you read the Gemara, that's what you would say. Okay? The question is that it's not true. I mean, it's not realistic. You can't fix glass
But
Keilim.
also, what's the reason? Because you can fix it. Why would that be?
The Gemara says it's done to metal. Just like it has a property that's similar to metal, so just like it has a property, Chazal chose to freeze. So, I asked someone in Corning about it, okay, and they said that glass has a, I don't know what I'm about to say, high thermal expansion coefficient. Okay, I don't know what that means. But they said what that means is that when you have hot glass, when you have a hot piece of glass, you can shape it and form it and attach it and do all kinds of cool things to it. Okay, once you're finished, and it goes to it's. I don't know what the word is called. There's a word. I don't know what the word is. It goes to whatever that process is. At that point, there's a fancier word than that. Once it goes through that, at that point, realistically, you cannot heat. If you heat it up again, it's just going to explode. Okay? You realistically can't heat it up and then reshape it and make something else out of it. Okay, so it says in theory. I guess in theory, it's possible to do that, but realistically, no. There's no way to do that. Okay, realistically, if you take a piece of glass and you
one chance when it comes from sand, divisional mix.
Well, one chance is if you watch people make glass, it stays hot for a long time, and they form it and shape it, and they keep it hot. They keep putting it back into the fire to keep it. They can keep forming it. But once it's done, it's done. Okay, if you crack it, they can't fix it back up.
I spoke to a guy who does it.
Okay.
He said, sure, of course you can fix glass.
Okay, so you'll tell me who that is afterwards.
And again, what was
I met him at a company that fixes rail cars. He's a welder. And I asked him, you ever heard of welding glass? He said, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what he's talking about in a second. That I could probably answer with that. Okay, so okay, so so I was bothered. So what does it going to mean? So now, there could be this answer, okay, and that's what he's talking about, and that is there's a kind of a glass called borosilicates. Okay, borosilicates are silicate. You make glass mainly out of sand, which has a lot of silicon in it, and it has mixed with boron trioxide. Okay, so it's called a borosilicate. Borosilicate, you've heard of that. That's what you make Pyrex out of, and that's what you make the glass stovetops out of, okay? And they have a very low thermal expansion coefficient, okay? Whatever that means. I don't have a clue what that means. But what it means is that they can handle the heat, and when you heat those things up, then you can fix them and repair them. What?
They didn't have that then.
So, as we know of it, those were discovered or created in the late 1800s, okay? So, we can imagine, could it be that in the times of Chazal they knew how to make those kind of glasses? I don't know. Maybe
they could have done this.
Maybe they knew how to make that. Okay, now, if that was true, if Chazal knew how to do that, if they had glass like that you could go ahead and you could talk about borosilicates, there's no reason to think that they did. But if they did have that, then we'd have a different question. Which is, well, maybe when they said they only meant the ones like that, the borosilicates, the Pyrex glasses. Maybe they didn't mean the regular glass that we have. Okay, yeah, it could be. I would say it's a big question.
I mean, glass was different then, so maybe when they told you that you can't do that, maybe then it was what.
There was a hype.
So in other words, you're saying is that what I just said to you, they had a different kind of glass in us that was able to be melted like borosilicate. They had some kind of a glass that could do that.
They didn't have worse glass, but maybe one mile they had was that.
Exactly. Call it what you want to. There's another form of glass that's like a borosilicate. It's made out of pure silicon. It's very, very hard to work with. Maybe they had something. Okay, so it could be that they had something like that. Kenzine. Okay. Again, there's no. I don't mean source like as in a Rashi and Chumash. I'm talking about a source like as in a historical source that they had glass like that was so more advanced than what we had. But it could be. Okay. Now, another choice, what I think is a more realistic choice is like this. that the Gemara doesn't mean, the Gemara is not to be taken literally. Okay, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that in a second. When the Gemara says, Rashi says about that, Roy lahatichoy v'asoisoi kli. Okay, what does that mean? Roy lahatichoy v'asoisoi kli. Okay, the word lahatichoy is the same word as the word mateches. Okay, it comes from the same word as mateches. And Rashi says in Chumash, when it says about the borrowed, who borrowed lo nitach arza, Rashi says two pshatim what that word means, lo nitach arza. Okay, and the second pshat Rashi says is based on Psukim in Yecheskel, which is looking at metals. Kihito kesef, okay, it's looking at metals over there. It says it a few times actually in that parsha there, in Yecheskel. And over there, and that means is to liquefy. You liquefy and pour it. And Rashi brings another makor to it later on, also in Chumash, that you liquefy and you pour it. Okay, so by the borrowed, just back to the borrowed for a second, it says, borrowed like nitach arza means is, not only did the borrowed stay up in the sky, but it didn't melt and pour down as rain. Okay? I'm sorry, it doesn't say borrowed, it says, umoter lo nitach arza, means that the borrowed did not liquefy into water, as you would imagine it would, and pour down into the ground. Okay, so if that's what it means, so when Rashi says, Roy lahatichoy v'asoisoi kli, maybe that means to say is not that you could repair it, but that you could melt it, like as in what we do when we recycle glass. Glass can very well be recycled. You can take the glass, melt it down to a blob of glass again, and you can start again. Okay, so now.
I understand. I thought that's what I meant to begin with.
No. Okay, so maybe that's what you thought. When I read the Gemara, I thought it means like metal. When you make metal, you can melt it and fix it. You can repair it. Okay, not melt it back into a blob of metal and start again.
I think this doesn't mean that I know a blob. I think that what the Gemara means by metal. You can melt it, the whole thing.
Okay, by metal, okay, and to me, metal you can melt it and fix it.
Why do you think the Gemara means to fix it?
However, takana is like to fix it, not like start again.
Takana means to fix. Start over.
So the problem. Okay, Yossi is very happy with that. Yes, you have to go home.
Fix the situation.
Yes, you can go home. Yes, but to me, it doesn't. It didn't. How can the Gemara say chinishtab takana? How can they say takana if it means if that's not like the way metal works? Here it means is you're going to melt it back down and you're going to recycle it, do it again.
How do you repair metal? You think
You weld it.
Yeah, you could
you weld
heat it and melt it. Okay, so what I thought was like this. Maybe say it like this. This Gemara in Avodah Zarah, well, that's where Tevillas was at the end of Avodah Zarah. This Gemara in Avodah Zarah is really coming off of the Gemara in Shabbos. Okay, the Gemara in Shabbos says like this. The Gemara in Shabbos says that the Gemara talking about Tumah. Okay, we'll see that Tumah and Tevillas have a lot to do with each other. As far as Tumah, glass Keilim are similar to clay cheres because they're both made from the ground. Okay, glass is made from sand and cheres is made from clay. They're both made from the ground, so they have something in common. They have certain din of Tumah the same. Right, the Gemara. Oh, so what about a different din of Tumah? Why doesn't glass have a different din of Tumah that cheres has? Okay, what din is not important? Why doesn't it have a different din? So the Gemara answers to that, no, because glass is similar to metal because kinishtabu yeshem takana. Okay, the same line, essentially the same line. You must say kinishtabu yeshem takana. When it breaks, you could fix it. So in that context, if you just saw the Gemara on Shabbos over there, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as metal. It just has to have any dimion to metal. Just like metal, if you can fix it. This can sort of has a certain dimion to metal. All the Gemara means to say is not to say it's exactly like metal, not like what we're accepting in our English to be exactly metal. I'm saying it's close enough to metal. It just like so it has a certain dimion to cheres, it's made from the ground. It has a certain dimion to metal because it could be remade, and therefore between them, so the glass has this in between din for tumah. If that's all the Gemara means. Then our Gemara in Avodah Zarah is just copying that line from the Gemara there, but it shouldn't be taken mamash so literally. Okay? There's an interesting question on that. Rabbi Tevillas on the side of that Gemara in Shabbos tells you to look at a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Okay, if you look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it's in Chelik, okay, it's in Agadata, and the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says that if the Rebbeinu Shalom could take glass that's made by humans, he could fix it. So Kol Shekain, he could take people who are made by him, and once they're dead, he can make them again. He can fix them up. Okay? The Gemara is talking about Tchias Mezim. The Gemara says, if he could do it to glass, which is even only made by people, Koshkin, he could do it to humans that are made by himself. Okay? So that Gemara by itself is not different than what we're saying, because there the Gemara is talking about the Rebbeinu. The Rebbeinu can handle the high, what is it called? What's it a fancy word? Thermal coefficient, expansion coefficient. Yeah, he could do that. I'm not worried about the Rebbeinu being able to do that for glass. He could work with glass. The question there from the Rashi, because Rashi says, on the Gemara that said you could fix glass, in fact Rashi, there's another Gemara that says that when your glass breaks, it's finished, it's hopeless, you can't fix it anymore. It's easy to break, it's easy to break, it's easy to break, and once it's breaking, it's hopeless. In fact Rashi, really? It's hopeless? I don't know, the Gemara says here that you could fix it. That's Rashi's kasha. So according to what we were saying, what's the question? The Gemara just said there's a bunch of things. People can fix it. Okay, anyhow, so let me just finish by telling you, all that we said, the glass, either like just in the pshat in the Gemara, or I'm saying maybe that is the pshat in the Gemara, okay, there is a pshat in the Gemara, and the Gemara just means is that it could be melted back and started again, and it's just a dinyan like the Gemara says in Shabbos. That's different than a klicheres. Okay, a klicheres, when you take a klicheres, the process of putting the klicheres into the kiln goes through, as I read, 6 different steps. Okay, 6 different steps that happen while it's in the kiln. And among the steps that happen there, some of those steps destroy and remove elements and change elements that are inside the clay. So that means is, after you finish making your klicheres, if you took the klicheres and you put it and you melted it back again, you can't make a new klicheres out of it. Okay? It's missing pieces. Okay? You've destroyed, you destroyed carbon and sulfur, and you change the crystalline structure or something else. You did a bunch of things that it's not coming back. Okay, you can't recycle that. Okay, you can't break that apart and melt it and start again. So for there, so klicheres for sure doesn't have that to be like metal. But glass, we'll say, the Gemara says that it does. Okay, so we're leaving off here. We're just from my side warming up. Next time to talk about some other materials.